Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming to the workshop for personal statements. I'm Brittany Harden. I am a pre-health coordinator and advisor at Truman State University in Kirksville. And just a quick background, my undergrad degree is in secondary education and my master's degree is in English. So sometimes I feel like, why am I doing stuff with pre-health professions? But I have a little bit of context for that. So I taught high school English for about 3 years, and then I stayed home for a year, and then I started working at Truman State as a freshman advisor. My husband is a dentist, and I kind of went through, we were together while he was at dental school, and so that's kind of how I got into advising pre-health professions specifically. So I can kind of bring a little bit of the English background, especially to personal statements, as well as what's needed for college admissions and health profession school. So let me just share my screen and get going on the presentation here. So as I said, we're going to kind of talk about, both college and professional school admission. I know that, there's a range of age groups here and kind of goals. So we'll kind of touch on all of that. First, we'll talk about general tips, college and professional school admission. So kind of both of them together. The biggest thing, and I think any English teacher would say this, right? The biggest thing with essays, especially, is just to start it. We make it into this big, enormous task that doesn't seem to be feasible. We make it impossible, and then we procrastinate it. And I just want to really encourage you to not procrastinate admissions essays, whether it's for college or health profession schools. And we'll talk about why here in a bit. We're going to talk about free writing, answering specific questions and ideas to kind of get you started on the process. One of the easiest things you can do, especially if you're feeling really unsure about what to write, or just maybe like you just don't even know where to start, right, is to free write. And I'm sure you've done free writing. I'm sure you've talked about it in your English classes throughout your years of schooling, but it really is useful. So usually I suggest to start with a specific question, or just even start writing and just commit to 5 to 10 minutes. Sometimes if we look at an essay and we think, okay, this has to be X number of characters or X number of words or X number of pages, that's what hinders us from actually getting started. And so if you just commit to, okay, I'm just going to write on a topic or answer a question, or even just whatever's coming to my mind for 5 minutes, usually that's enough to get you going. For instance, you can start with a prompt about why you want to go to a specific college or school or program. You'll probably meander. You might talk about, you might start out with, I want to go to this college because blah, 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 and you might end up talking about what you had for dinner last night, and that's okay. It's just kind of whatever comes to your mind, write it. Even if you can only get one little nugget of something out of there, it was worth your time. The other option is, or in addition to free writing, you can also answer specific questions. So some of these questions that you really want to have in mind when you're starting a personal statement is, what are my life and career goals? I think that's kind of the biggest one, right? Don't just focus on your career. A lot of times when you are applying to a college or to a health profession school, it's easy to go, well, this is what I want to do in my career, but also think about what you want to do in your life other than that, other goals, extracurricular goals, family goals, whatever it is, just because that's part of who you are too, right? And personal statements are all about who you are. So even if you don't use it in your essay, it can be good to kind of go through some of that. It can also help you narrow down career goals, depending on what some of those extracurricular goals might be. Why do I want to go to a certain college or school? That's just kind of a general question that a lot of college admissions people are going to ask you if it's not part of their personal statement prompts anyway. What programs am I most interested in? You know, are you unsure? Can you narrow down the list of programs at that school? Have you even researched what programs are offered? I know as a freshman advisor, sometimes we meet with potential students who are like, I really want to do architecture. And we're like, we don't have that at Truman. I'm sorry you visited here, you know. And so just make sure that you research those programs well and kind of get a feel for what they entail. How can going to that specific school or college prepare me for a future career in XYZ? You might look at, you know, graduation rates and placement rates and things like that. What is it about that school that's going to prepare you well? How will I contribute to this college or program? Why would they want me? As much as you're, you know, buying into a program or buying into a college, they're also kind of buying into you as a potential student. So it's important to kind of think about your attributes, your characteristics, your skills that you're bringing to the table. It's kind of like a job interview in that way, to a certain extent. Why do I want to be a XYZ professional, a medical doctor, a teacher, whatever it is? How did I get to this point? Either applying to college or professional school. What encouraged me to continue on this path? So I think that's important because especially with, you know, professional school, but the college route as well, there are huge challenges that go into that. It's not an easy path. It's rigorous. If you're looking at the college aspect, if you are a first-generation college student, if your parents didn't go to college or don't have four-year degrees, what made you want to go along that path if you kind of don't have that expected, or whatever challenges, you know, what did you overcome to kind of get to this point, and why did you overcome them? Ask yourself, do I have a life-changing moment to discuss in my essay? Honestly, the majority of people will not have this amazing, like, this changed my life and made me realize I really needed to be this in my future, or I really needed to go to this place. Most people don't have that, but if you do, you should totally use it. If you have it, that's a great asset to a certain extent. If you don't have that life-changing moment in your life, some things you can talk about are, you know, what reflections do you have about your seemingly ordinary life and events? How are you looking at life, and what kind of life has handed you? So kind of answering those questions, I mean, you'll have plenty of ideas for a personal statement. Another option is, or even in addition to the other two, is an outline or ideas. Basically just writing down the important points and putting them into an outline. A lot of times when I read my students' personal statements, my students who are applying to medical school usually, they will come to me and say, well, you know, my essay seems like choppy or all over the place, and I feel like I'm just jumping from one thing to the other. And my first question is always, did you make an outline? It seems so elementary, but a lot of times we skip that step because it seems like an extraneous thing, when in reality it's super important, especially if you want a cohesive essay. So making an outline, especially when you've kind of narrowed down maybe what you want to talk about, can be great. I have an example up there. You know, you can talk about in one paragraph, when I realized I wanted to be a XYZ profession, or growing up in whatever background you had helped me pursue your desire to do this. My goals for being an outstanding profession. So kind of looking at like kind of your past, your present, your future in relation to either that college or that profession. This is another example. I'm not sure what I want to do. So as a freshman advisor, I work a lot with undecided students, and that's totally fine. That's expected. In fact, I would argue that most of the students that come to college, even with a major declared, are really undecided because they change so many times, and that's just how it is. So, you know, you can talk about that in your personal statement about how you don't know for sure what you want to do, but maybe attending a certain college with certain programs, or like for instance, Truman has what we call the liberal studies program, which is kind of core courses in a variety of areas, you know, art, literature, math, science, that helps students kind of explore that. So looking at the college from that perspective, if you're really not sure what you want to do yet, can be a good thing to talk about in a personal statement. And then how your background has made this path difficult or challenging or supported. How, you know, I've read great personal statements that talked about how supported they were through the whole process, and just how, you know, that the kind of idea of wanting to support others in their goals and things like that. So, so most of that is just, you know, getting started. It's really hard to get started, even as someone who's written lots and lots and lots of papers. It's hard to get started. And so find some way to just write down at least a sentence, right? That's all we need at some point. And then what you'll find, it is easier if you just get that down. So after that, after you get started, we go on to drafting and reworking. Basically, we're talking about the writing process. And I feel like we do need to go over the writing process to a certain extent, because I still have college juniors who skip points, you know, and think that they can, and think that they're the exception, and you really can't. I hate to say that, but you really can't. You have to draft, you have to proofread, you have to have other people read your stuff and comment on it, right? And so you just have to, especially if you want a personal statement that's going to wow admissions committees, or maybe not even wow them, but make them go, I want this person in my school. So that's why we're talking about it. Also, I just love it because I'm an English person, but that's fine. So after you have some of those brainstorming outlines, questions, etc. answered, you can move on to, you know, kind of the next step. Sorry, I'm going to move my thing. Okay, you can move on to a draft. You'd be surprised how easily a super rough draft can come together after you have already done all the pre-work stuff. All the brainstorming, the ideas, the outline, any one of those things, then a draft comes together super easily. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be a terrible draft, and you just have to accept that. You're not going to write a wonderful personal statement essay or a wonderful essay at all just by typing it up, right? There's no way. So just accept that your first draft is going to be terrible, but doing it is the important part. After you write the first draft, you write another. You can just revise the first one, obviously, you know, going through that writing process of revising and drafting and revising and drafting, or consider trying a draft that goes along a different line. So, you know, you might write one draft that kind of focuses on your career goals and how you got there, and you might write another draft that really talks about your extracurricular activities and how that's changed you and grown you as a person, right? These drafts shouldn't take long, right? You're just getting something on paper, trying to get it down. You shouldn't worry about word count or page length at this point, right? Just getting these ideas down in sentences. After you do the drafts, then you can decide, okay, especially if you did drafts over different ideas, you can decide, I could really run with this one a lot better, or this one sounds a lot better than the other one. And they don't take very long, so it's worth the time. And then after you write about 2 or more different topics, you can always write more, right? You could write like 5 or 10, but at some point you're going to have a hard time deciding probably, or you're going to be too spread out, or you'll need to combine them. But you have the freedom to decide what sounds better, which one to go with, what's going to show you as a person most. And then after that, we're talking about revising, right? After you decide on a topic or draft that you want to go with, it's time to start revising, editing. Your final draft may look similar, it may look super different. Any of that is okay, right? So when you're revising, obviously you have to proofread, obviously, right? More importantly though, you have to have many other people read it. You skip over issues in your writing and think that things sound okay more than somebody else will. So if you're going to proofread it yourself, read it out loud. You'll be able to hear some of those awkwardly worded things, kind of like what I just said, right? Awkwardly worded sentences or whatever that you can revise. But other people are also going to do that. You should also have at least 2 or 3 proofreaders who know you really well, who can tell you, this sounds nothing like you. You know, this sounds fake, this sounds robotic, or yeah, like who you are really comes through. But they have to know who you are in order to make that really work. Some things to avoid, cliches, right? Please remove these, they're terrible and everything. Find better, unique ways to say things. Also keep in mind how many times these admissions people have read personal statements. Thousands. For some who've worked a long time in admissions, maybe even millions. They've read a lot of them. And so, you know, cliches just really have no place in there. You're showing your personal statement, you're showing who you are as a person, show them that you are unique and not like the 1,000 other people who also applied, right? Don't be fake, right? Don't just tell them what they want to hear. Especially with professional school admissions, they're well trained to spot when someone's just saying what they should in order to get into medical school or dental school or PT school, whatever it is. College admissions, of course they want you to be real. They're not as maybe concerned with that. They want to know who you are, of course, but professional school admissions definitely care. Get rid of all phrases like I believe, I think, in my opinion. It's your personal statement, right? So we know you think that, right? And the final thing that I really want to harp on is put down the thesaurus, or because we live in 2018, do not go to thesaurus.com or whatever it is. I know you want to sound smart, and everybody wants to sound smart, right? But it makes your essay sound robotic. It doesn't make it sound real. It makes it sound very impersonal, which is the antithesis of a personal statement, right? So just be careful about what words you do use a thesaurus for. I would suggest, if you find yourself using the exact same word over and over in your essay, to find different ways to say it. And so if you need to use a thesaurus in that case, pick a word from the thesaurus that you would actually use in everyday conversation, not the 3 or 4 syllable high point word, right? So other than avoiding, here are some things you should include. Specific stories and anecdotes whenever possible. Anytime you can show admissions committee something, the better. They've read lots of essays about how students are compassionate and kind and caring, and a lot of those essays come off as egotistical, right? Because you're telling somebody how great you are. Instead, show them. If you show them that you're caring by the student that you worked with and mentored through high school, and really began to know this person and fought for some of these things that they needed, like maybe they had a learning disability or something and you tried to help them get services or whatever it was, show them that. Don't come right out and say, I'm really kind and compassionate. They'll get that from stories that you have like that one. Action verbs and exciting verbs. You didn't go somewhere, you sprinted, you hopped, you jumped, you skipped, whatever. Make it a little exciting for the admissions committees if you can. Again, they read thousands of these every year, and if yours stands out because it was more exciting than someone else's, then you did your job, right? Okay, so those were kind of general tips. for anybody writing a personal statement, really, whether you're headed to professional school, whether you're headed to college. And so now I kind of want to focus in on college admissions and what college admissions committees are looking for. Specifically for college, admissions committees are usually looking for your ability to write a coherent sentence. They want to know that you know how to communicate, essentially. And mostly because, you're going to have to communicate with a lot of different levels of people at college, right? Professors, staff members, peers, etc. And they also need to know that you have a certain level of writing ability in order to succeed at their college, right? Your understanding of basically English grammar and conventions. Again, just this idea that you know how to communicate. That you put the correct school name in the essay. Right, that does happen a lot. So be careful with that, right? It's really easy to just copy and paste and miss something. So you have to really pore over each essay, even if you're copying it from one to another school, right? That you understand basic social conventions, right? No cuss words or, racist remarks or whatever it is in your personal statement. They want to know that you're going to be a community member, a helpful community member, right, to their college community. That your unique voice will contribute to their community, that you as a person have something to give to their college, right? And then it's about you and who you are, not some example essay you read or not all about your friend. I read, I guess, a medical school admissions essay that it was talking about, it was all basically about this girl's friend and the struggles that her friend went through. And yes, it did kind of come together at the end and say something about how, in the future as a doctor, she wanted to kind of fix some of those issues that her friend had. But in the end, your personal statement is about you. So even if that did have an impact on your life, you can talk about it maybe in a shortened version, but your entire essay should be about you, not about someone else. Some things to consider: character or word limits, they do matter. And it's hard to find that good balance between you don't want to go over the limit, but you also don't want to go write like 3 sentences. So just make sure you pay attention to those. They're different for each college. They're different for each school. So, and what's on the rest of your application, right? If you are writing a personal statement that's just listing everything that you've ever done, right? That's not useful to college admissions people. That doesn't tell them who you are outside of what you've already listed on an application. Now, if you just have something that is really meaningful to you that's listed somewhere else, but you don't really get to explain it or talk about it much, you can focus your essay on that, but just make sure that you're not really overlapping too much. Some schools have specific questions or prompts they really want you to focus on. If they don't have a specific prompt, what's their mission say? What is the school's goal? And do you kind of line up with that? And so, that's something that you could even talk about in your essay. I think going to this, going to this college will be great for my future career because my mission, my beliefs line up with your mission statement, or, something along those lines. The school specific strengths and why you want to go there, right? Do some research. We have the internet. There's no reason that anybody should be ignorant of what programs are out of school, right? Try reaching out to faculty members in programs that you're interested in. See what their research interests are. See what they've been doing, or what interests them, and talk about those things in your personal statement if some of those things are things you're interested in, if there's some overlap there. The school wants to know that you actually do know about their programs, that you actually are aware of their greatness to a certain extent, what's going to make them great for you, and that you align with those things. Some general essay prompts that some schools have, you know, just describe someone you admire and why. And so that is a personal statement in a sense, right? It's talking about you. And I mean, it's talking about someone you admire, but, you know, you're telling them why. And, you know, usually the why, if you admire somebody, is going to be something about how you would like to be that way, right? Discuss a book you love. The books that you read can have a lot to do with who you are, a book that you really like. And you can really pull some of your personal characteristics and personal interests into that. Discuss an activity that you've been involved in that's changed your life, right? Have you had a leadership role in something? Were you in the spring musicals every year, etc.? And then the Common App essay prompts. These are the 2018-2019 ones. But basically answering questions like these would be useful for any personal statement. You know, a talent that's meaningful, or a background, or an activity, right? Obstacles and how you overcame them. Really, almost any personal statement, any admissions committee wants to hear a challenge that you faced and how you overcame it, or something that went wrong that maybe threw you off your path and how you overcame it. That's the key there, right? Like, how did you overcome this challenge and grow as a person? And so anytime you can talk about that, it's like a gold mine. Reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. Describe a problem you solved and how you solved it. It could be an ethical thing. That would probably make a better personal statement. Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that helped you to grow. A topic or idea or concept you find engaging. Or a topic of your choice. Almost any college essay will let you pick a topic of your choosing. So it's kind of handy because you can just write a personal statement about you and the things that are most important to you and go with it, right? Okay, so that's all about college admissions. Let's talk about some professional school admissions. And, you know, this is something that I probably know most about, simply because I do this a lot on a day-to-day basis, and I have read lots of personal statements for students going into health profession schools. So yeah, let's dig in here. So obviously everything we listed about college admissions, they're looking for those things too, right? Medical schools do not want to accept students who don't know how to write a sentence, right? So obviously they want to know that you know how to communicate and that you know how to write coherently, and you know, all those other things that we talked about. They also want to know what makes you a unique candidate to that professional school. Especially with medical school, thousands and thousands of people apply every single year for 100 spots at each school or so. What makes you stand out? You know, what will make you a better professional, better health professional than other applicants? And again, we're not talking about listing, well, I'm kind, I'm compassionate, I'm really awesome, whatever, right? Not anything like that. You have to show them, right? And so that moves on to my next point. Especially with health profession schools, you have to show them, right? You have to show them that you're a caring, committed person. And a lot of times, you know, people who are applying to health profession schools have spent a lot of time being a leader, doing shadowing hours, doing clinical hours, working one-on-one with, you know, patient groups, whatever it is. And so you should have plenty of options to talk about with showing who you are as a person. And they can get so many character traits from one story, right? Again, if we talk about how, you know, you go around at the hospital and talk to patients who are in there and just chat with them every day and see what they need. If you get them water, you kind of serve them, right? Those admissions committees are getting a lot about who you are just through a story like that. And ideally, you would specifically have, like one patient or a group of patients that really stood out to you and talk about one specific time. But if you needed to talk about it in a general way, that way you could. Something else you can talk about and that admissions committees look for in health profession schools specifically is motivation and alignment. So basically, what's your motivation for pursuing a health profession schools? There's a wide range of motivations for pursuing health profession schools. And in some cases, they're not great motivations, right? I want to have a comfortable living, or I would like to make 6 figures, or or my parents are making me because both of my parents are doctors, whatever it is, right? And I would argue that if any of those are your motivation, then you should not even spend the thousands of dollars it's going to cost to apply. But people do. And so heads up, don't do that, okay? Don't write about how you want a comfortable living. Find what it is about the medical profession that working in healthcare is going to mean to you, right? Is your motivation real? Is it because you want to make a difference? Is it because you want to, find a cure for something or whatever it is, or, work towards finding a cure for something, or etc. Do your beliefs and values align with those of the profession you're working towards? Do they align with that of the specific school? Again, each school has a mission statement and core values, and there's a reason for that. I have this conversation a lot, especially with my pre-med students who are applying to either a DO or an MD school. And we have to really talk about, do your core values line up with allopathic medicine? Do they line up with osteopathic medicine? Do they line up with both to a certain extent? And, helping them narrow down that option. PT school is the same, dental school is the same. Each school has, core values about who they are as a school and who they want their health professionals to be when they graduate and move on. Because you're ultimately representing the school that you went to a certain extent, as well as your profession. Some things to consider with health professions. Character or word limits. Again, pay attention to these, right? There are limits, and in some cases, there's not a whole lot of space to really prove to them that you are the candidate for that school, right? And so you have to utilize the space that you do have. I've talked a lot with the director of admissions at ATSU, and she's kind of mentioned, when people only write 2 or 3 sentences, I wonder if they were really trying, or if they were just like, well, Mom, Dad, I tried and I didn't get it, if they really wanted to be there. And so by not putting a lot of effort into a personal statement for a health profession school, you're really showing them you don't care, which is probably one of the worst things you could do, right? So, get close to the limit, but don't go over. Make an argument about your readiness for your career with evidence that proves it. So, if you want to look at your personal statement for health profession school as your typical 5-paragraph essay with a thesis statement, and then using your body paragraphs to support that thesis statement, you should do that if you prefer to look at it that way. Ultimately, your argument is that you are going to do well in the health profession school and the impact you're going to make on that profession. And make sure you acknowledge and discuss any difficulties you've had. So, there are lots of students who their first semester in college or their second semester in college, their GPA just bombed. And it's better to be upfront about that in your personal statements to health profession schools, because they're going to want to know about it. You also want to make sure that you take responsibility for whatever difficulty you're talking about, right? If you write about how, man, my first semester in college, my professors were all terrible and I just couldn't learn from them, but it was better the next semester because I had different professors, that's obviously a terrible, don't do that, right? They want to show that you have matured and grown as a person and overcome those obstacles, right? I can't stress that enough. They want to know how you've grown and changed from the situation. A lot of times they're fine to, you know, accept you even with a rough semester, rough, you know, past, if you talk about where you're going from there. And this goes against everything your English teacher told you, and it hurts my heart to say, I won't lie to you, but don't worry about a catchy hook for your essay. You don't need to drag them into your essay. You don't need to like put a beautiful quote about the healthcare field and blah, blah, blah. You just need to start writing about who you are as a candidate and as a person. And most of the reason for that is because any hook you use is going to come off as fake. It just will. It won't go over well. It won't seem genuine. Don't do it. Makes me sad to say. Okay, if you're applying to medical school, there's a difference between MD and DO schools, right? You should know that. And you need to make sure that you are applying to the correct one, or both, if you're okay with both belief systems, but you're going to have to write about how your beliefs align specifically with a DO school, if you're applying to a DO school. And with MD, they kind of emphasize some other things. Either route is great. Either route will make you a doctor, right? But there is a difference, and they want to know that you know that too. So make sure that you're aware of it. Make sure that you talk about why one or the other is better for you. Avoid adverbs. I'm sorry, I'm an English nerd, but pretend you're Ernest Hemingway, okay? You're not Jane Austen. This is not the, 19th century British literature, okay? Get rid of all the fluff, right? It's your personal statement. You have a limited amount of space. Get rid of the extraneous things. It's not worth the admissions committee's time to read through how wonderfully and lovely and whatever, it doesn't matter, right? You're writing about you, get rid of them. Avoid being redundant. Again, it helps helps to have other people read through your essay because you don't notice as much when you say things over and over, right? They'll help you find the words that you use too much. Avoid using the word helping. Help, help, helper, help, help, help. Help is a really ambiguous word that doesn't mean anything, really. Everybody wants to use it. Everybody tries to use it. Don't use it. Use a different word. Okay, this is one of those times where a thesaurus comes in handy. And again, if you're using a thesaurus for this, use a word that you would actually say out loud in conversation and that you know how to say, right? But you can help people in a variety of occupations. You don't have to be a healthcare professional, right? Consider a word like serve. It makes it a lot more, yes, you're assisting people, but you're also putting their interests first as opposed to help. There's lots of reasons to help others, right? So consider the words that you're using specifically and just don't use help. It's terrible. Also avoid any of the following phrases. And if you're applying to a health profession school other than medical, just insert that in there, right? So I've always wanted to be a doctor. Yeah, you and like thousands of other people, millions of other people, right? Or I've always wanted to be a dentist. That's not as common, but I've always wanted to be a physical therapist, whatever. I've wanted to be a doctor since the day you were born, since you were a kid, since you were in your mom's womb, whatever it is, don't use it, right? Everybody wants to be a doctor since they're a kid. Give them a better reason. Give them a better moment of when you realized that this profession was for you. I hope to be like Dr. So-and-so someday. It's just not a great, helpful phrase. Again, with the help, I want to help others. I want to help others because the doctor helped my insert family member, right? And I love science. I have actually seen that in personal statements. It's great that you love science. You know what? You could go do research in any science field. You could go be a biologist. You could go be a chemist. You could be an engineer. You could do all sorts of other things with science than be a healthcare professional. If you had to say, I love something, I love people would make more sense. Because as a healthcare professional, you are serving people. They are the reason you're there. Your patients are the reason you're there, right? And so these are just like basically cliches specifically for healthcare schools. And so, yeah, cut them. Oh, questions. We're already at the end. All right, that's good. So let us know what questions you have on the chat. You guys can kind of get together and ask. And then I also have my contact info afterwards so that you can ask me questions any other time as well. Can I show it? Elizabeth, did we have any questions throughout the presentation?
None that have come through yet.
Okay, that's totally fine. I can go ahead and put my contact info on here as well. So if you have any further questions, you know, about college admissions or health profession schools admissions or anything like that, I'm happy to answer them. I would give you my phone number, but I'm really terrible about returning phone calls because I'm just not in my office a lot. So there's my email, bharden@truman.edu. Yeah, I'm happy to answer whatever. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't look like anyone has any questions, but they said thank you. You were very helpful.
Great. Thank you guys for coming. And good luck.
All right, I guess we'll call that a wrap for tonight. It will be on the YouTube channel eventually after Academic Technologies gets some editing done and pulls it off of Zoom. So I will send an email letting everybody know when that is up, and you guys all have a wonderful evening.
Okay, you too.